How do you make an already treacherous, harrowing journey even more harrowing? You add COVID-19 to the equation. You've had basically private rescue ships of this type operating for months and years, Annette. That's not new. And they have, every step of the way, almost always had trouble finding safe harbor for migrants that they've rescued at sea. The difference here being is that with the coronavirus pandemic, Europe, which already had no policies really of solidarity on migrants, they've been accused by a lot of the NGOs, these private rescue ship organizations, including Doctors Without Borders, which helps run some ships, of essentially using COVID-19 as a cudgel for enforcing their what they see as deadly migration policies. That is, using COVID-19 as an excuse to keep borders closed to migrants and keep them from coming ashore. In this case, you had this ship, the Ocean Viking. You said they tried on they rescued these people in late June 25th and June 30th, 4 separate rescues. They've been in limbo on the seas for a week. Why? 7 repeated attempts to try to get permission to offload these migrants on dry land were rebuffed. So the ship kept floating. What you had is what one doctor called enormous psychological distress building on the ship. Stress that led, as you pointed out, to fights, to suicide attempts. 2 migrants even tried plunging into the seas, were rescued by some crew members of the charity organization, and also threats against the crew. All of this under that psychological duress. None of this has to happen. It wouldn't happen if you had some sort of policy that gave them pause and let these migrants know that their situation's tough, but they are going to have safe harbor.
Talking of which, European leaders are holding a summit later this month. Yeah. Are we any closer to seeing a more united European approach on this subject?
Not really, Annette, and I'm not saying that to be cynical. I'm just looking at the evidence of it. Europe has signally failed multiple summit after summit, to forge a common approach to immigration. You've had, really in broad brushstrokes, to sum it up, countries in the north or in Eastern Europe, such as Hungary, Poland, the Czech Republic, almost categorically just refusing to show solidarity and take any of these migrants. Meanwhile, you've had the geographically close countries, close to Libya, from which many of these migrants are fleeing, Italy, Malta, Greece, to a lesser extent Spain, taking on the brunt of the burden. You could say, yeah, they have a legitimate case saying we don't have the capacity to take everyone in. We need Europe to show some sharing, some burden sharing. You have Germany as the new EU president, rotating presidency, started on July 1st. They're meeting later this July. Germany says they hope to be able to forge some sort of policy that would have a comprehensive framework for considering applications. We've heard this line before. Is it going to happen, Annette? There's not that much reason for optimism. And meanwhile, despite the pandemic, migrants are still determined to make it here. Sure, the numbers are down on these ships, on these treacherous Mediterranean crossings, but the deadliness, it's still just as deadly, and they still say they would rather get to Europe and flee the desperation in their homelands and risk a pandemic than stay at home.